Hello! How's everybody doing? So today's video I want to talk about just a talkin vloggin, because I was thinking about this the other day when I was at work and a memory popped into my head, and it was like one of those moments where I was like, you know, normally I think people would regret this, but I just don't. And you know, I get asked that every once in a while with my life. It's like, especially getting married so young, because I don't know if you guys know, but I was married once before Matt. Matt's actually my second marriage, but I got married when I was 20 and I was divorced by the time I was 22. And some people ask like, hey, do you regret that? And I'm like, no, not really, because there were so many things, as hard as it was towards the end, so many things that I learned and so many experiences that I wouldn't want to take back, because I think it made me into the person that I am. Regardless of if there were hard parts in that relationship towards the end, there's a lot of good things that came out of it too in the beginning, and like we had so much fun together, and it was just one of those situations where we just kind of drifted apart and it just didn't work out. But ultimately I don't regret having done the marriage thing, because it's also one of the reasons I ended up in California. And so like I don't really have regrets in life, you know, even like starting a business and failing a business, or like doing certain things that put me in a pickle. And I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit, but like all of these things that I've done and experienced in my life all made me who I am. It's one of those things where I don't see the point in regretting it. I think regret and all of those, I kind of talked about this in my like failure video. Regrets and all the failures are just how you look at things, right? Like, do you look at it as something that completely destroyed your life, or do you look at it as something that made you a better person? Or is it something that you can look at and say, hey, I could take something from this experience and learn something that I otherwise wouldn't get to learn? And I think your attitude on experiences are what shape whether you're gonna regret something or not, or whether you're gonna consider it a failure or not. There are things though, like I'm not gonna lie, there are things that I do regret, but a lot of them are things that like I wish I had done, in a sense of like, for example, like my dad, you know, right before he passed away, the night before he actually passed away, I had this urge to call him. I was like, man, I'm gonna call my dad today. And at this point, I know he was still alive. I remember I was looking at my phone, but I kept getting distracted. I kept getting distracted from work. And by the time I had gotten home and I was done with work, it was like close to midnight, and I knew my dad would be asleep. And the next day he passed away. So like, those are the kind of moments where I'm like, damn it, I should have fucking picked up my phone and just called him. Just even like a 10-minute conversation, just to hear his voice and say hi. Or like, there are things that I wish I could have asked my dad, which is one of the reasons why I asked my mom everything. I want to get to know as much of her as possible while I still have her on earth. So my dad loved Disney. I don't remember if my dad really liked Donald or Goofy. And for some reason, that's like a thing that bothers me to this day, that I'm like, man, I wish I asked him which one of his Disney characters was his favorite. Was it Donald or was it Goofy? And so, I don't know, those are like the little things, right, that I wish I would have done. I wish I would have done differently. I wish I would have called. So those are like the kind of regrets that I have. But like, there's a lot of things in life that I've done that I probably should regret, but I don't. And we're going to talk about the top 3 things that I should probably regret, but I don't. Number 3, I took out my rent money that I had been saving up for the entire month. It was like $500 or something. And I went and bought Billy Joel tickets and went to a Billy Joel concert instead. Billy Joel was playing in San Francisco's AT&T Stadium, and he hadn't played there in like 30 years. And at this point, I think this was back in 2014 or 15. This was around that time, and he hadn't played in like 30 years at AT&T. He hadn't come to San Francisco, and it was just one of those rare moments where Billy Joel was coming to town. And I was like, there's no fucking way I'm missing Billy Joel, because Billy Joel is one of my favorite singers. Like, he is one of my favorite artists. I love Billy Joel, and I've always wanted to see him in concert, but his tickets were pricey, and I was, you know, to buy tickets for me and both Matt, like it was gonna be about $500, especially like if you include like parking and all those like things that you have to pay for just to go to San Francisco. And all I had at the time was money I had saved for rent. Smart decision would have been not to go to Billy Joel and just have made the payment, you know, the rent payment. But there is no fucking way I was gonna miss Billy Joel, because I don't know when I would have been able to see him again, especially considering like he's on the older side. He's probably not gonna make it back this way towards California anytime soon. I had a feeling this was my chance. And I remember why this was so important to me was because when I was in Okinawa, there was a composer, one of my favorite modern day composers. His name is Joe Hisaishi, and he composes a lot of the Hayao Miyazaki movies. And my mom had asked me, like, do you want to go see him? Because he, on a rare chance, he was actually coming to Okinawa to do a concert. And I was like, no, I don't want to see him, even though I like really wanted to, but for some reason I said no. And to this day, I kind of regret that decision of not going to go see him. And I was like, no, if I want to go see somebody, I am going to go see somebody. And Billy Joel, like, I cannot tell you how much I love Billy Joel. And at the time, it was right after my dad had passed away, so there was also that connection that I had with my dad, like, because we talked about going to see Billy Joel someday. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go see Billy Joel. And so I took out my money from my account that I was saving for rent, and then I just went and bought Billy Joel tickets. And honestly, do not regret a single moment. The moment that guy played Piano Man and the stadium went dark and everyone had their lights going like this, like, I was bawling my eyes out. I can't take that moment away from me. That was such a special moment for me. I remember I felt my dad in that stadium with me, and like, I struggled to pay rent next month, but like, that moment I will never ever forget. That was like such a big moment for me, and I can't thank Billy Joel enough for that night, because it was like one of the most fantastic nights in my life. So there's that. Number 3 is that I probably shouldn't have gone to see Billy Joel and I should have paid rent instead, but I don't regret that. Number 2, having $20,000 worth of debt and going into collections because of taking out credit cards and stuff to start businesses. So before Matt and I started our successful media business, we tried and failed maybe 3 or 4 other businesses prior to that. And in order for us to be like fresh new entrepreneurs and start different projects, like, we had to take risks as we were starting these businesses. And in the course of starting those businesses, between trying to survive and trying to start businesses, like, we ended up having to take out money. Like, both of us, we both struggled and financially. And I think towards the end of it all, I think I racked up about $20,000 worth of debt and went into collections. I mean, to this day, I still have those debts, and I have those collections, and I'm working on like paying it down now. But do I regret having that? Like, putting myself in a position where I was $20,000 in the hole as well as being in collections? No. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I would go through the same failed businesses. I would go through all of the struggles of not having money, having to go to the dollar store and buy what we can and living off of that, and even like not being able to afford food at all. There were moments where Matt and I were maybe eating like cheap bread and having like a case of eggs or something. Like, there were moments where we couldn't afford to even eat. Instead of buying food, we would pay for like another advertising for our business. Like, there was a lot of things that we did that cost us a lot of money and ultimately made us go into debt and ultimately made me go into collections. But do I regret any of that? No. That whole experience of trying businesses, failing businesses, buying advertisements that completely failed, or buying like courses, all of that was a learning experience. All of that, it was expensive, but probably cheaper than college, honestly, if we really thought about it. Like, all of those experiences that I learned, like, not only made me a better and stronger person, but also like ultimately taught me a lot about business and taught me a lot about life. And like, that's why for me, I don't see failure as failure. I see it as a learning experience. So do I regret the decision of, putting myself into debt and collections in my 20s to try all the businesses that I tried, to take a leap of faith and to take risks? Not at all. All of it meant something, and all of them led to this moment. I'm still recovering from that aftermath, and I'm still in the process of rebuilding myself from all the decisions and choices I made in my 20s. But all of that is still to this day, everything I've learned still very useful for everything that I still currently do today. And if I was asked would I do it all over again, yes, in a heartbeat, for sure, 100%. You know, people are like, man, you know, you could probably do it smarter, and it's true, but at the time I didn't know any better. Like everything I learned was from the trial and error. So I could definitely take what I've learned and experienced at that moment and then like transform it into better decisions now. But if I hadn't made those bad decisions, if I didn't make those, like, take those financial risks or take those risks and failed and stumbled and to a point where I could barely feed myself and to a point where Matt and I were almost homeless, like, there wouldn't be me now. And all of that experience is just, I don't know. It's just, you can't take that back. Like, there's so much to have been gained from that. I don't regret those, like, at all. Like, even to this day, I'm still like 20 grand in the hole, and I'm still in collections. It doesn't faze me. Like, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I will pay it back eventually. I will get to a point where I'm no longer in the position of being 20 grand in the hole or in collections. But like, I wouldn't trade that for all the experiences that I learned in my 20s, for sure. So the last thing that I probably should regret but don't regret is having backpacked Southeast Asia for 3 months. So I don't know if I ever told you like the story of how Matt and I ended up backpacking Southeast Asia, and it's kind of like funny. So Matt and I went to go see Tony Robbins. His Unleash the Power Within. If you guys don't know who he is a motivational guru. Some people call him a scam. It really doesn't really matter which side of the coin you stand on Tony Robbins, but Matt and I like him, and we went to go see him, and it was like this 4-day event. Actually, that's another thing. I bought tickets to go see him from my rent money, and I don't regret that at all either. But it was a 4-day absolutely mind-blowing experience. Learned a lot from that experience, and when we got home, Matt and I were talking, and we were like on this high, like this high that a lot of those, like, you know, motivational stuff gets you into. And we just realized, like, we had been talking about wanting to go backpacking or like do all these things. Like, we were in California for 10 years, or not, at that point it was probably like 7 or 6, but we really never did anything we wanted to do. You know, we were just focused on work all the time and just like trying to make it. At this moment, like, we had a business that was semi-successful, which was our media business, and we were making some money. You know, we were like, man, we never got to do any of it. Because we were like, you know, it was always like, we'll do it later, we'll do it sometime, we'll do it when we become successful. Like, that was always our saying. We'll do it when we become successful, when we can afford it. That was always our saying. After that Tony Robbins event, I remember we were sitting in bed one day. We were talking about all the things we always wanted to do, and this was like one of the biggest things. And I remember we both kind of looked at each other and we were like, let's just see how much. Let's just start it off with, let's just see how much a ticket is, a one-way ticket to Asia is. And so we were looking, and then we saw that it was one-way ticket to Asia was about $500, and we both had that, and we were like, let's just buy the tickets, let's just buy it right now. And we just kind of talked to each other into it, and that night we just, on a whim, we just were like, bought tickets to go to Southeast Asia. And then the next day we told our business partner and we told our roommates. We were like, guys, 7 or 8 months from now, Matt and I are going to go backpack Southeast Asia. We just bought a one-way ticket. We're gonna go. We've always wanted to do this. You know, at the time, like, I say our business was successful, but I've mentioned this in my old video. Like, it was doing well, but it wasn't like we were rolling in dough. Like, we were still paycheck to paycheck, especially when you consider California prices and stuff. Like, even if you were making good money, which here, Matt and I would have a really good living off of what we were making in California. But in California, that was just like barely just having your head barely above the surface of the water. We had to save a lot in the next 7 or 8 months, and we had to like make drastic changes. I mean, we ended up selling a lot of our furniture. We ended up giving away a lot of our stuff to Goodwill. I mean, we literally cleared house in the 7-8 months. We started making plans for our business, you know, to make sure that it was going to be okay while we were gone. We made a lot of lifestyle changes in 7 months because our mentality was like, let's just decide on something and then we'll figure it out as the time approaches. In fact, that's kind of also how we moved to Japan. Was we were like, we picked a date, we bought the tickets, and then we figured it out. So we made the goal first, and then we figured out how to do do it once we set the goal. But yeah, Southeast Asia worked the same way. We just decided that we were gonna go. We bought the tickets, and then we didn't really know anything about backpacking. We just knew that we wanted to do it. And it was honestly one of the best and most fun and it was amazing to just have our backpack on and then just travel from country to country. It was awesome. We went to Thailand, we went to Cambodia, we went to Malaysia. By the time we hit Malaysia, we barely had any money, so we kind of got stranded in Malaysia for a month until we figured out like how to get out of there. But honestly, like, it was awesome. We got back to the States. We were absolutely piss broke because we had sold our car. We moved out of the place we were living at. We had sold everything, so we had to live with Matt's parents for like a moment until we got back on our feet again. And then eventually we did within like 2 or 3 months. And let me tell you, when I say we were piss broke by the time we got back to California, we did not have a pot to piss in. It was like, oh my God, it was so bad. But for me, and a lot of the times, and I'm not the best person to get financial advice from, but all of these things that happen in my life, all these things that I probably should regret but don't, involve some sort of like money versus experience. And I think there are moments where you should pick money because you have to, there are moments where you have to be smart and you have to like obviously put a roof over your head. As long as you're on this earth and you're living in regular society, like you have responsibilities. But I also think that there are just some experiences that no matter how much it costs, doing them and experiencing them are so much more important, because to me, money can be made back. You might struggle making it all back, but eventually you do make it back. And I think that's one of the reasons why I don't stress about money as much as I did in my early 20s, because having experienced all these things and experienced the 10 years of my life where I had like this like up and down with money, is one thing I realized is if you work hard, money comes back. And so I've always been at this mentality where like I will always choose specific experiences, like going to see Billy Joel, who hasn't played in AT&T Park for the last 30 years, and I don't know if I'll ever see him again because of his age. Going to backpack Southeast Asia because I didn't know when that was ever going to be a thing, and like look now, like at least I was able to do it. And now with the virus and stuff, who knows when that's ever going to be a possibility again. To taking risks and starting businesses and failing at businesses, even though it put me in a very bad financial situations, like all of that are experiences that I would never ever like take back. Like those are experiences that have taught me more than money's worth. I think especially now that I'm in my 30s and I experienced all those ups and downs, like I realize now that there are definitely moments where you have to balance responsibilities with living life and experiences. And I think that's what I'm working on right now, is that you can't always be loose with your money and like go off and like just choose experiences. Like there are moments where you do have to take a step back and be like, okay, I can't have these experiences right now. I have to focus on like responsibilities and money. But I will still always be that type of person. If there is an opportunity that presents itself that may potentially hurt me temporarily, I will probably still choose those experiences too, if they were like once in a lifetime experiences, because I think at the end of the day, life is all about experiences. But right now, I think I'm just learning that balancing act, learning how to live life full of experiences, but also not constantly putting myself in like a financial bind. And it's kind of it's a balancing act, but I'm figuring it out. But ultimately, like I said in the beginning, is like I think regrets and the idea of failure is just, it's all subjective, right? It's how you decide to view those experiences and situations. If you decide to view it as something that you could take those experiences and learn from, they're not necessarily failures. Anyways, that's it. That's all I wanted to say. That was all the point of this vlog. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I love you guys so much. I will see you guys in tomorrow's episode. Love you. Peace. Bye. Boop.